Thank you so much, Aurora. And thanks everyone for being here for the in-person, this panel discussion. The first thing, that's a very important thing for me, was that for the last 2 years, I was doing the virtual discussions. And one thing I was worried about that my internet is working, so I'm able to do the panel properly. But I'm least worried about that at the moment. So that's the good news about that. Aurora asked you some questions on the movies. Be true to me. How many understand Metaverse? What exactly is the Metaverse? It will help me whether I should tweak my questions for the panel members or not. Please raise your hand if you understand Metaverse really well. Oh, okay, one lady, two. Great, so there will be tough questions for you, definitely. So, as you're aware that the Metaverse term was coined 30 years ago in 1992, but suddenly we're seeing a major hype that everyone is focusing on. And the topic is also the madness of the Metaverse. So why suddenly there's such madness in the ecosystem? Would be good to know. Venkat, maybe we can start from you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Why the hype right now? And yes, let's discount some of the overhype, but some of the hype is certainly validated. Let's think about two factors. One, imagine mobility. I talk about mobile internet, if you will. We've all been users of internet about, say, since 25 years ago. Think about that time versus now, and it's like night and day. Our experiences with social media and various things, because internet was a revolutionary technology and innovation, but the secondary innovations that came post that, I name few things, iPhone, app stores, social media, and so on and so forth, has completely transformed how we engage in the internet land. So it's easy to project how things will be, let's say, in the next 10, 15 years, and if not as much, but some more would be there in the new metaverse. So it is a continuum, if you will, in the evolution, and that is something to keep in mind. And a lot of people attribute saying we are at this stage where the next generation or the next evolution of internet is going to happen. Second point is convergence or the maturation of certain core technologies. Have they come to an inflection point? We know about AI, for example, at least spoken for 40 plus years, but something's changed in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, it suddenly took off, because it was a combination of compute, storage, network, bandwidth, etc., etc. But I think, personally, in my opinion, what drove the adoption, made it main scale, was the explosion of data. And the explosion of data allowed for a lot of training, and then your AI models could be applied in a variety of domains and use cases. So if I were to come to the metaverse land, people would think about like metaverse is comprised of multiple layers, and the foundational layers like infrastructure, compute engines, backend engines, virtual platforms, and so on and so forth, have devices, for example. They all arrived at a certain level of maturity, and people are attributing between these two factors as to why this is here to stay and this is going to be very large, and hence the hype.
So Sundar, if we come to you, NVIDIA is known for the AI as well as a focus on the metaverse because of the Omniverse as well. According to you, what's the need as of today in the enterprise ecosystem that everyone is talking about metaverse?
See, the need is more technology driven is what I believe. I mean, just to extend Rangath's views here, one very important trigger for metaverse to be reborn, I would say, is, like he said, the evolution of technology. Today we have reached a point where there are two very important factors that are needed for driving metaverse have arrived. Number one, you are able to see digital entities very realistically. Not only seeing realistically, you are also able to predict how they will behave realistically, right? So when you are in a virtual world, the ability to see something as it would appear in the physical world and to predict its behavior through AI, machine learning, deep learning techniques, so that it not only looks real, it also behaves real, is something that has been achieved today, right? Now, think of this. So where do we need this? How does the need evolve? So anything and everything where you need to model an entity in the digital space so that you can design it and predict its behavior can be done much more realistically using Metaverse today. And that could be in training, that could be in surgeries, that could be in designing your digital cities, etc., etc. Anything that needs to be modeled in a very I would say a plastic 2D environment or maybe in a very dumb 3D environment can be done in a much more realistic virtual world today where it looks real and behaves real. All those places will have need for Metaverse.
Understood. Dharam, if I come to you, as they spoke about that, where's the need? And you're part of the R&D services organization. Do you really see the need? The customers are reaching out to understand more and build the use cases. How are you seeing it from the enterprise side, I would say the demand side?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. The maturity of the technology, the realistic use cases which can be built, and I think this we are already seeing in our industry. If I were to take some examples, and I would just add one dimension to why. I think one thing that last 2 years of disruption across the world has done is we are willing to accept to operate in a digital environment, and that has driven us to experiment. I think companies are willing to adopt, experiment, and build newer experiences, newer use cases. As my colleague, our president at Acodis yesterday talked about the butterfly effect leading to tornadoes. This could be the next tornado which the companies could harness. And if I were to just take an example, we are doing simulations around trainings, pilot training on one of our platform, which is Apprentice. This is a real life situation because, of course, you can't get somebody into the plane, but even getting onto a simulator is a very expensive concept. We can do that on our platform through, today it is mixed reality, virtual reality, in that environment. But just imagine putting somebody actually in a 380 cockpit on day one and having them feel and realize that what it means to be in that environment and train through that. Imagine somebody doing assisted maintenance in a very complex industrial project, and you have very few of those. But just imagine they doing that across the world, sitting anywhere, in real life, guiding them while being in that environment. So that's something that today we are doing on a VR mixed reality simulation environment. It will become really real and experiential in Metaverse, and we are already advancing towards that. So I think these are some of the use cases that we are seeing in aerospace, in automotive, in industrial, in connected world, which today we are already extending from our current platforms into Metaverse, and I think those are use cases we should look for. I don't think there is any limit we should put on what's possible and really explore.
Sure, thanks. I think so, Ranganath, Dharam touched upon the point of the mixed reality, the VR. An important aspect is how is it different from Metaverse? That's an important angle. Everyone is talking about that the AR, VR, MR is something similar, but is there a difference between the Metaverse and the mixed reality? It'll be good to understand.
So Metaverse is a very, it covers wide spectrum of applications. If you take the applications like high fidelity graphics with MR headsets, which are very expensive, like $2,000, $3,000, to low fidelity graphics applications, just experiencing with the browser. So it's a very wide spectrum, right? So coming to your question about MR, MR will give you the interactive experience, right? So AR is just, okay, you have an overlay of graphics, but MR will give you, it's like more advanced, like you can, like Dharam explained, like in industry applications, you are giving a training to somebody, or a doctor handling things, equipment and all those things. So you can actually interact with your hands, gestures. There are lot of advancements happens in the MR domain.
Okay, got it. Venkat, you come from the BFSI industry, and recently JP Morgan announced that they're getting into the Metaverse. Me and my friends over here like, really? What is the JP Morgan going to do in the Metaverse? So looking at your experience in the BFSI, can you help us understand what exactly are the use cases like a bank will do with the Metaverse platform?
Yeah, it's not just JP Morgan. You would have heard HSBC, Standard Chartered, a bunch of financial institutions talking about that. At this point of time, they're tipping their toes. They're trying out various things. It's much more on customer experience, saying, can I invite some people, my retail customers, and provide them a superior branch experience, if you will. I've seen one where you can go and look at the various products offered by their wealth management group and then like sample it and probably have a fireside chat with Jamie Dimon, for example. I mean, these are all like gimmicks, but the whole point is most of the enterprises attempting it. Now, there are certainly definitely use cases which Dharam touched upon in the industrial side of things with digital twinning, etc., where it has gone mainstream. But when it comes to banks and other institutions, they are tipping their toes, they are building the brand, demonstrating that they are pioneering, leading all these things. But still, there are certain things that are not mature yet when it comes to payments, when it comes to privacy, data confidentiality, etc. I don't expect at least the financial services firms going as far ahead as compared to, say, manufacturing and advertising and branding guys, if you will, because of these reasons. So when I talk about the maturation, there are multiple layers here, and to a large degree, I think people still complain about, oh, it's not quite there. If you think from a consumer perspective, if you're a gaming platform, I need to have hundreds of thousands or even millions of users, concurrent capability, and so on and so forth, distributed. And it's not quite there in terms of technology. Or if it's a live concert, somebody in Barcelona for a global audience, probably the experience is not quite there. But when you're really looking at the enterprise side of things, it's pretty controlled. So that means the number of people, concurrent users, is very limited. So that means if you are experimenting, or you can go beyond experimenting, saying, I can provide superior learning and development for my employees, or I can try better things for customer service and support. These are things that any enterprise in any vertical should be able to do. So back to the BFSI question, yes, a lot of activities are happening, but they are not going to be mainstream. What I mean that is these are not going to be integrated into their mainstream business models, at least not yet.
Other than BFSI, Sundar, if I come to you, which are the other industries where you see the need of the metaverse? Because you're managing the consulting partners, the global, the big ones. So I'm sure that they mentioned about the customers' requests and all that. So which are the other industries where you see the applicability of the metaverse platform?
There are a few actually. Gaming is very important.
That will be on the consumer side.
That will be okay. That
Yeah.
on the enterprise side, architecture, engineering, and construction. That's a very important one. Media and entertainment, not from a gaming perspective, but from an immersive view where you get into an entertainment environment, maybe a Disneyland or somewhere. I would classify that also as enterprise only. And you get an experience where you not only feel as if you are in the real world, the digital entities around you behave like they are in the real world. That's a very important one. Last but not least, the most important one is in the manufacturing side. I'm using the term manufacturing as an umbrella term. Aerospace, factories of the future, everything will fall under this category. Where the interesting concept of digital twins come into play. Where every physical entity, say for example, if I take the example of a Airbus A380 that has got 4 turbines, right? Each, let me call turbine 1, 2, 3, and 4. So each turbine number 1 will have its digital twin in terms of, let's say, the sensors attached to it, the how much pressure is generated, how much temperature is generated, etc., etc. So the behavior of every individual engine that is flying on the sky or which is grounded can be modeled in the data center. So instead of doing a periodic maintenance where it says that this model of engine needs to be maintained once in 6 months, what you do is a predictive maintenance where you are able to model the behavior of every individual engine in your data center, and hence predict that the engine 1 needs maintenance once in 3 months, whereas engine 2, because it flies in much more hazardous environments or whatever the reasons are, needs a much earlier maintenance, right? So this essentially results in saving of billions of dollars. What I'm telling is not fictitious, it's not futuristic. it is being practiced today in this world. So manufacturing is a very, very important area, and I just touched upon the tip of the iceberg. It goes much beyond that. Modeling factories of the future, right? I mean, creating factory floors which don't have any workers. How do I model it? How do I exactly predict how various digital entities will behave given different boundary conditions, etc.? All these can be modeled in Metaverse.
Very curious to know, you mentioned about the construction industry. How is it possible in that?
Oh, it's once again an immersive, experiential objective is what you want to say. I mean, once again, if I take a step back, I mean, there are two different work streams here. Number one, it looks realistic, exactly realistic with how you would feel in the physical world. The second one is it also behaves like real entity, right? For looking like real entity, what you need advanced rendering and visualization techniques, which has been there in the architecture, engineering, and construction for many years now. You can do virtual walkthroughs, virtual fly-throughs, etc. That has been there, and that is what sort of differentiates the traditional, VR, MR type of application with what we are talking about Metaverse today. It just stops with looking real. Now we are talking about, can the digital entities also behave realistically? To do that, you need to predict how an entity is going to behave given such certain boundary conditions, given some scenarios, right? If this were to alter this way, how this entity would behave, right? That needs deep learning. That needs artificial intelligence. So Metaverse is a huge amalgamation of two distinct technologies, namely advanced rendering and visualization and AI. The amalgamation of these two is what defines Metaverse, and that's needed for AEC as well.
Sure. Then if I come to you, and Accorders have a big focus on automotive. Sundar touched about the construction and the manufacturing industry. We see like a lot of automotive companies are talking about Metaverse, including the European majors as well. What is your viewpoint on the use cases in the automotive industry that you can talk about?
Yeah. I think across multiple areas. I'll first talk about development.
Sure.
So, Sundar talked about factories. So factories of the future, simulation, supply chain optimization. You can do it in real world, almost realistically in Metaverse, rather than trying to experiment on your factory floor. That's on the production side. Today, I think you might have seen, some of us, I think I see it a lot more being in California. I'm sure across the world you have these cars mounted with cameras, sensors, and they're going around the city mapping the infrastructure. They are trying to, what they're trying to do is they're trying to mature their algorithm so that it can anticipate any obstruction or, anything which they can experience on the road. Now, to do that, current algorithms say that they need almost millions of miles before they can be L3 level ready. And today, Teslas and Google, Waymo, who have been doing it for last 10 years, they have that experience. But just imagine any other new player getting into it. Do they have time to experiment their algorithm for next 10 years? No. Imagine creating the same environment in Metaverse and where you can feed these obstructions and you can cut down the validation time for your ADAS development, for your algorithm maturity by 1/10. You can do it in a year. So in the entire connected smart car development, this is going to play a big role. And then the cars themselves are not going to be just a means of transport. You have to create different experiences in the futures of car. While you are there, what do you do if you're not driving? What do you do? It can be your office. It can be entertainment space. It can be your family space. And then imagine being there with somebody sitting in Shanghai or Hong Kong while you are driving from Sarjapur to MG Road. So that can be an experience that you can create in the car. So I think the boundaries are, the possibilities are endless. And that's where I think the businesses should not restrict it. And that's where I think this thinking is required for businesses in terms of how they can create use cases. I think opportunities are going to be almost limitless across all the sectors that we talked about.
Definitely.
In addition to the obstacles and all that Dharam very beautifully explained, even weather modeling comes there. For example, my car needs to be trained for all weather conditions, when it is snowing, when it's raining, when it is bright light, when it's dusk, when it's dawn, everything, right? But I'm running my car in Bangalore city at 12 noon and capturing the scenery outside. But how will the car behave when it is snowing in Bangalore, right? I mean, I cannot wait for snow to happen in Bangalore and train my car, but that's a necessity for my conformance. I need to train the car when it's snowing also. I need to train the car when it is raining as well, right? I need to train the car when it is dawn, when it is dusk, bright light, etc., etc. So these things, everything cannot be captured. So I create one base environment and then I simulate the multiple weather conditions there, right? And they have to be realistic. So in addition to training my the car data on actual environment, a lot of simulated environment is a necessity for me to train the car so that it gets trained in a very holistic way, in addition to roadblocks, in addition to deviations, forks, etc., etc. I cannot go and search for forks and then gather data and train my car on that, right? So am I able to simulate the fork in a very realistic way? How my car is going to behave, how my car can be trained in that area. So as Dharam very clearly, very correctly mentioned, the applications are totally endless. And I mean, like we all say, success begets success. The more and more we explore and more we find, more and more will evolve in the days to come.
To add to that, think about you are driving on 100 feet road, Indira Nagar or High Street or Fifth Avenue. Think about all the retail chains there, and you're seeing as you're driving or going through in the car, all the deals that are happening. I mean, it is to the imagination to be left over.
So Rangana, you want to talk about the M&E industry, the media entertainment, which is a very hot topic.
Yeah.
Other than the gaming side, there are many other aspects in the media entertainment. How you see in that industry?
See, in Metaverse is, as I mentioned, it's very wide, right? Like centralized Metaverse to decentralized Metaverse, and economy without virtual economy, with virtual economy. Again, in virtual economy, decentralized cryptocurrency based and centralized economy. So coming to gaming, Metaverse is a mainstream already. Coming to the media and entertainment, so I'll give you an example of a Sony. Sony's company's purpose is filling the world with emotions. Okay, so you can look at your company purpose and see how Metaverse can help, or you change the purpose of the company. So now coming to Sony, how do you fill the world with emotions? So it is possible with the creativity part. So creativity, so we want to be very close to creators. Okay, so I'll also give an example of where Sony is working. It's in the public domain. Sony is tied up with Manchester City, the football, the club, right? So it has Etihad Stadium. So it's completely reconstructed in the virtual world. And Sony has a technology of Hawkeye technology, which is used to help the umpires to replay and all those things, right? So the same technology is used to track the players and track the ball. Okay, and the same is in real time fed to the avatars of the players. So the entire the Etihad Stadium is virtualized, and you can enter into that metaverse, and then you can sit anywhere in the stadium, and you can, in fact, you can sit on the ground also next to the player, and then you can watch, and it is real time, right? So the problem that you are solving or the value that you are creating, that is more important. And in media industry, there is another thing which everybody knows, like in Fortnite, the events that are happening live, right? The media, the concerts that you can do live, and a lot of other things like engaging fans is very important, right? The community, how every industry now is about building communities. Like either it is retaining customers or expanding your business, it's about how you retain your customers. So if you take a media channels, right? If you take a example of media channel, there is a character like Mickey Mouse or something, right? So in your programs, you have that character, and you want your kids or the fans who are the viewers glued to your program, you have to engage with them, right? How do you engage? You create a metaverse where you not only just watch the character, but you also interact with that character, and you behave like a character, right? If you take an example of a KGF verse, recently launched their metaverse. So you like the hero, but you want to be like a hero, or you want to be in that scene. So it gives an opportunity for you to interact in that. And then blockchain and NFT is helping to retain that, right? So you are giving ownership. So people will be coming back again to your platform and they will remember your the movie or the character or in the program. So there are a lot of scope for metaverse in media and entertainment industry.
Interesting. I think someone touched about the 7 layers of the metaverse. It starts from the infrastructure, technology, and it goes up to the experience. Venkat, if I ask you, in which layer the maximum disruption is going to happen in the coming times, and where you see more and more players entering into, according to you?
I think disruptions are happening across all the layers at this point of time, all the way from semiconductors to superior user experiences. The biggest I expect is going to be in the experience layer as well as the layer around payments and interfaces and so on and so forth. For example, if you look at the backend engines, to a large degree, guys like Unity and Unreal have kind of made it a little bit of a standard. I mean, I know there are like some folks here in this panel who have their own proprietary stacks, if you will. But one of the barriers for wide adoption, because people should be able to traverse and navigate across different virtual platforms and applications and so forth. And there's a push towards interoperability, for example. And that's not quite happening because everyone, quote unquote, is coming up with their own standard. And this is very true in every technology evolution that we have seen. But the disruptions I expect to see is more and more when the Web3 aspects are coming into the metaverse land. Some people do conflate metaverse with Web3. For me, they are two separate, distinct things, but there are clearly areas around decentralization, the payments I talked about, the wallets, the NFTs, and so on and so forth. And there is going to be a continuous disruption that's going to be happening there.
So no, I think so. Venkat about the interaction layer, which is more on the wearing the devices and all that. No one is interested to wear the device for the 8-10 hours to experience any of these use cases. What's going to happen in that? What's the disruption or the innovation is going to happen in that? Otherwise, everyone will run away from these devices, the headache and all that. So motion sickness, yes. So what is your viewpoint on that?
So obviously browsers will become much more powerful. I mean, whatever you are experiencing wearing your headsets, you might be able to experience it in a browser on very large screens, on caves and things like that. Once again, Rajat, I'm forced to sort of go back to the same thing. So we do have caves today. We do have very powerful browsers today that can run on very large screens. We do have domes, etc., etc. But today what we are having is something which looks realistic. Tomorrow we will have something which, in addition to looking realistic, will also behave realistic. The digital assets will behave realistically. And AI and machine learning and deep learning will enable that. That is going to be the biggest difference, right? In terms of the infrastructure, the visualization, devices, etc., they will have a natural evolution. Like we evolved from CRT monitor to TFT monitors to domes and caves, etc. That will continue to happen. But the key here is the ability to model digital assets which will look real and behave real through AI. That is the key here.
Can I add 2 points? So coming to the innovation in all the layers, like if you see the user experience, there are multiple aspects. Like nobody want to wear a heavy device also. It's not just the time, the heavy device, right? So how do you reduce that? And how do you make it like a sunglass? And some companies are working. So lightweight. So it is only possible when you can offload your computation to some other device, right? So when you are offloading to some other device, it could be a gaming PC or it could be a PlayStation, gaming console. So when you are offloading, then you need a wireless. Otherwise, you are just tied to that, right? So there is a lot of innovation happening on how do you transfer that high bandwidth in that. That is one thing. The second thing is coming to the consumer application. So you may not be having a PlayStation or a game PC when you are walking on the road, right? So how do you solve that problem? So that problem, the offloading of the CPU and all those things will happen to the edge devices. So when you offload to the edge devices, so you do the less work on your device. So then the device can be very small. So people will be easily wear it. So when it comes to offloading to the edge device, so there is a lot of innovation happening on the edge. How do you do GPU rendering on the edge device? And then there is a latency coming into the picture, right? So the latency, how do you reduce the latency?
Right.
5G and all these innovations in the wireless technology that is propelling these.
Okay, interesting. So a lot of development is happening. Now, coming to the real thing, like, Dharam, congratulations, you invested in India, opening up a new center. Do you think so India is ready for the metaverse, like in terms of the skill sets, the talent? Are we ready to solve some of these global problems from India's center?
Absolutely, I think, thanks for your congratulations. We just opened our, expanded our office today. We just inaugurated a place very close to here in Whitefield, and we are very committed because we are going to go across India, across multiple cities. Because we see that opportunity. So I think if you see today, and we were just having a chat as panelists just before this panel. There is a lot of talk today about technology centers which are evolving, mushrooming across the globe. And then there is talk about Silicon Valley. I live there, so I get into a lot of this chat. There is a mass exodus which is happening outside of Valley into Texas, into Austin, into Boston, into this. I think there is a core technology DNA that a location has. And yesterday, I think, Zinnov partner, I think he was talking about the talent scale in India. The number of, we are producing about 1.5 million engineers in India. If you see today, India started in the semi and hardware space almost 20 years ago, to getting into services, to getting into core product development, into AI, and and then expanding business use cases. Today, we saw GCCs across retail to banking to technology sectors which are present, to the unicorns which are coming up in India. So if you see, India has traveled that journey of maturity of a valley and a technology ecosystem. So you have that diverse talent which is available. So coming back to that, I don't think you can take away that DNA from a location which has the talent ready, which has the industry use cases, which has the model ready. Yes, the new locations, you need to be present, you need to tap into the other geographies to bring that cultural understanding of the use cases and businesses. But I think India has that scale and maturity and organizational depth today across the industry that I think it is ripe. And I have no doubt that we will see a lot of such innovations happening in India through a combination of this entire stack, right from business to technology to hardware and the use cases that we already see. So, and that's the reason we are very committed as a Codis to expand in India.
Oh, that's good to know that. We are out of time, so this is a good discussion, and hope I helped each one of you to understand Metaverse a little bit more. But open for the questions if anyone have any questions for the panel members.
Hi, I'm Jyoti, quite a newbie when it comes to Metaverse. So while it sounds very exciting and quite a good amount of learning for me, is it anyway going to impact the cognitive abilities or the learning of human beings? While it has a lot of upsides of it, is it going to impact the natural cognitive ability in any way?
I don't believe so. See, your skill sets will change. For example, the human beings were skilled at riding oxen for tilling the land. Then they lost that skill, but they are now very good in driving a tractor for doing it in a much more efficient way, right? So does it mean that we all complain that we lost the skill set to use oxen for driving, for tilling the land? That's not the right thing to do, right? So the skill sets will change, the capabilities will change, the learning curriculum will change as per evolution, but it's not a negative thing. It's not that human beings will lose being humans, is what I believe. Yeah.
And also it is working positively. Like if you take an educational field, right, there are a lot of concepts, it's very difficult to explain to kids. But actually Metaverse is helping them. And also defense applications, I recently understood that, so you need to train defense people, but they don't have equipment to train them. So how do you actually solve that problem? So you're solving with the metaverse.
Yeah.
So it's in a way like it improves the learning as per my understanding.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. I wanted to ask if the legal boundaries that exist today will somewhat get pushed in the metaverse, or how will it be?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and today there's a lot of debate which is happening already. If you're tracking, can you harass somebody in metaverse? Can you? Yeah, because it is real. It is, and I would add to the MC's list of movies. If you, I don't know how many of you have watched Ready Player One. You are in the metaverse, but it's not just in the metaverse. You can have a suit where you can have physical reactions, real time, into what you are experiencing. So I think there is a very big question apart from we talked about business use cases, we talked about technology development. I think we as industry have to be, very careful about a responsible metaverse around security, around privacy, around sustainability. So I think it's a very real question, and like everything else, I think it will go through a level of maturity. But it is important that we build that into our business models right from here and now. Otherwise we see a lot of people learning it the hard way, and I think this is going to be very real.
Yeah, that's a great question. Not just legal, but compliance, regulation, governance, the whole bit. If you see the current, the GDPR was like catch-up mode after the problem happened. So hopefully we would learn. I am fairly confident. We talked about maturation, evolution, disruption, the technology stack. I think that's a given. But government's ability, whether it is the federal government, local government's ability to put together the right guardrails and the governance frameworks and so on and so forth, remains to be seen for wider mass adoption of metaverse, especially in the business context.
Sorry, we'll take the last question.
Sorry, adding more to this question.
Sure.
Yeah. So what are the global standards for compliance on this? What is anyone guided by?
It's still work in progress. We don't even have standards on how one platform talks to the other. How do you translate? It's still work in progress. I'm sure we'll get there after maybe a couple of bad situations.
Yeah, and I think if I were to just add, I think before we go into standards for metaverse, I think we will start adopting the existing standards of security, of privacy, of payments, of commerce, of transactions. And once you start following the existing standards and compliances across all those domains, I think there will be, I'm sure, a maturity which will start stitching the whole metaverse development and experience together. But I think there are standards available today which people will have to follow around data, privacy, around security, around compliance, around sustainability. And I think those will apply here and now.
We'll take the last question.
So the metaverse in some sense is a platform for delivery, and is this another hype cycle, or what makes you feel that it is going to be really mainstream? Can you tell us why you believe it is going to be really mainstream?
It is first of all, you need to, it's a wide spectrum, right? So you need to understand what is the problem that you're solving. Let's take an example of Apollo Hospitals. So Apollo Hospitals tied up with Microsoft and 8Chili company. So they are solving certain problems by using metaverse. How they are solving the problems? The first problem they are solving is like educating the patient. So there is a procedure and they say like 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs. I really don't know what they're doing. I want to educate that patient. How do you educate? Just explain. But doctors do not have time. So you give the access to the patient. It will be, they will get educated. That is one aspect. The second aspect is two doctors, two different places. How do they discuss, right? Right now it is video call, but that may not be sufficient, right? So what they are doing, MRI, CT scan, those are all in a certain format that is converted into 3D model, and then the two doctors from two different places connecting and then discussing with annotations. So there are a lot of things that you can solve. So it all depends on what is the problem. The problem is big, the adoption will be faster.
And I think I will just you should, I think I will recommend if you want to, there's a very nice talk by, VC guy, Mark Anderson. You should talk, which recently, where he talks about why Metaverse. And I think he says one thing very beautifully, that it is not something new. It's an extension of what is already happening today across industries. So that's why a lot of investors are putting a very significant bet on this, because it's an extension of experiences which are already happening across industry. It's not a hype where which is still people are going to figure out 10 years from now.
Sure, thanks. No, definitely in the coming time it will be the reality rather than the hype. And I can relate that in the coming years, the Zinnov conference would be running on the Metaverse platform. I can imagine that instead of doing in person. But thank you so much, all the panel members. Thank you so much for the interesting discussion. And thank you, the audience.
Great discussion. Thank you.